tuned into SEC Sunday Night, part of the Chief Sports Network. This is SEC Sunday Night, part of the Chief Sports Network.
All right, grab a drink and grab a snack. Welcome to SEC Sunday Night. We are live here every week at 8 p.m. on the Chief Sports Network. We're excited that you're here. I'm echoing a little bit over here. I forgot that I have my X account open. Did you get that?
Hello.
All right, what's going on? Craig, can you taste it, my brother? Can you taste it? We are this close to fall camp.
Oh, it's like Marshall and Charlotte are getting ready, buddy. I am excited. Let's go. I can hear that train coming down the track. Let's go, baby. Let's go.
All right. Listen, we know that the early season shenanigans in Athens aren't going to be that exciting, but the rest of us are ready for some great matchups. Week one is insane. Absolutely insane. But before we get there, we do have fall camp. And so there's a lot of good things to talk about there. Tonight, we have some excellent guests with us. We have our friend, Drew Crabtree, who's already here. We'll have him in here in just a second. We're going to debate the greatest conference. We're going to talk about what's going on up there in your neck of the woods up north, the Big Ten. Yeah. And we'll kind of give the perspective of what's happening down here in the other conference, as we've been called in the SEC. And then later on in the show, we have Brad Crawford on to break down your list of top 5 SEC coaches and give his thoughts on how accurate or inaccurate you may have been in that article.
According to Reddit, what an idiot. My gosh.
Yeah, I love the comments. They're the best. Thank you guys for reading. We appreciate you tuning in.
Thanks for reading. Keep sharing and letting everyone know that I'm an idiot. I appreciate that. So,
hey, before we get going, I want to remind everybody that we are brought to you by Hewitt-Damaduras Law. If you need personal injury attorneys, these are your guys. Look, don't fall for the billboard. Don't call the number on the commercial. These are the people that you want to talk to, because Brad and Dean are going to have a real relationship with you. And that's what we care about, right? We don't need the big corporate. We don't need somebody where you're just a number. We need somebody who's going to be invested in your life, who knows what they're doing, who have decades of experience, and who are going to get it done. And so we're excited, as always, to be presented by Hewitt-Damaduras. And you don't even need to be able to say Damaduras. Dean himself couldn't spell Damaduras for years. I had to spell it for him in elementary school. So here we are. He made it. Maybe that's not the biggest advertisement for his ability as an attorney, but he can spell his name now. Don't worry about it. He'll get you taken care of. So make sure, if you need personal injury attorneys, hdlawsc.com. Again, that's hdlawsc.com. All right, Craig, what's going on in the news that we need to address before we talk about the Big Ten? Before we bring Drew in, is there anything you want to talk about? Gwyneth Paltrow? Do we need to get back into the Coldplay stuff?
Well, no, I want to give a hats off to Astronomer, who performed a masterclass in PR. They had Gwyneth Paltrow shoot like a 30-second ad, like it came out Friday afternoon. And then for those of you that may not know, that may not be as granola as maybe me, Gwyneth Paltrow is the lead singer, Chris Martin's ex-wife. And she did just a masterclass talking all about Astronomer and what a great job they did. So hats off to them. Was jamming to Coldplay all day today. It was a great day. We had a good little YouTube mix going on. The little one was rocking it. Absolutely loved it. I do have one question for you, though. If we're actually going to get and talk about a little bit of football, I see Jesse and Michael all fired up. How close is Waffle House to William Bryce? What's the closest Waffle House to William Bryce?
It's close. I've seen this breakdown of like mileage. It's less than a mile. You can walk it.
It's got to be closer because old Beamer got himself an analyst. He went to the Nick Saban School of Wayward Coaches. He brought himself on an analyst. Jeff Collins, formerly head coach of Georgia Tech, last year defensive coordinator for the University of North Carolina, coming in as a defensive coordinator. And I want to ask you, is this a good move? I know Lucas Intern was doing the happy joy dance earlier, but I want to hear it from you.
Yeah, what you can't see from intern Lucas down there is not only is he providing the pine needle tea, but he also thinks Jeff Collins will be the eventual defensive coordinator at South Carolina if Clayton White is to take another job somewhere, maybe a head coaching position. So if, we'll set him up for I was wrong, or maybe that's the breakthrough moment and that's his great hot take, and we'll just keep leaning on intern Lucas. We'll see what happens. But no, I think that Beamer has done this all along the way. And so it doesn't surprise me. You've had Freddie Kitchens on the staff before. Obviously, Mike Shula is the offensive coordinator, and so former head coach there as well. And you're looking, I think, if you're Shane Beamer, just to add perspectives to the staff. And I don't think that it's a bad move ever to put somebody who's been in a head coaching role in there. I think that the overall understanding, and obviously then Sean Elliott also chose to leave his head coaching position at Georgia State to come back.
Yeah, I know.
Coach,
let's not rub it in, okay?
Yeah, well, you wanted to broach this topic, Mr. Panther alum. So there you go. I see Jesse over there says Clayton White isn't going anywhere. I don't think that this is much more of a this is not an indictment of Clayton White in that take. It's that if the defense is as good as some expect them to be this year, and I definitely expect them to be really good again, that he's going to get some looks for a head coaching position, and we'll see. Just like Guy Loggins last year.
Yep.
If he takes one of those jobs, and also shout out to Michael over there, because Bojangles is absolutely right next to Williams-Brice, and that's much more of a deal. However,
I will say that when I am in the Carolinas, Mr. Bo is a very, very good choice.
Yeah, it's always the top choice. I love the Jeff Collins move. I think it's fantastic. It can't hurt you. That's the thing for me, is that it's not going to hurt you to have former head coaches, whether in analyst roles or position roles or coordinator roles, whatever the case may be, because they bring a different perspective. They look at game day differently.
Yep.
Than somebody who's never sat in that seat. They look at preparation differently. They look at recruiting differently. And so that, I think it brings just total value to the program. So I'm fine. I'm all in on it. Bring on Jeff Collins and anybody else who's had that HC beside their name.
It's going to be interesting to see where Beamer puts him. Is he going to be on the field? Is he going to be up in the booth? Kirby has done that with Boom quite a bit, where Boom sometimes is down on the sidelines. Other times he is up in the booth, kind of giving that information. But I'm right there. Like, I think it's always a good idea to bring in that analyst, to bring in that extra set of eyes. I was shocked. I absolutely loved what Collins did at Georgia Tech. He did like that 404 brand. He tried to really make inroads with the Georgia coaches, and especially in and around Atlanta. Cannot figure out why that did not seem to work for whatever reason. Like, it just did not translate. But, I have no doubt that he'll be helping the Gamecocks out.
And, I think he's had a lot of success as defensive coordinator. He's in Chapel Hill last year. I don't think you can read too much into that.
Yeah.
His impact up there, that was a sinking ship as it was. So.
And it's floating along smoothly now in Chapel Hill? Bill
let's not get into that. We have differing opinions on whether or not we should leave Bill Belichick alone. But this is not an ACC podcast or show. This is SEC Sunday Night Live on the Chief Sports Network every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Let's go ahead and welcome in our friend Drew Crabtree, because at this point I feel like we have talked enough about other conferences. Why not add one more to the mix? Drew, first of all, my friend, what's going on? How are you? Wonderful background choice, let me just tell you.
Wait a sec. Hang on. Did you have that choice before you saw mine, or was that after you saw mine?
That was 100% a reaction to you putting that one up. I promise you that right now.
Come on, Cinderella. I thought that was a perfect choice. It was just before midnight. There was so much hope.
You can't use Cinderella when you're talking about Ohio State or Georgia. Come on now.
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I'll take that over here. Let me find a Gamecock hat, and y'all can call me Cinderella all you want.
There you go.
Perfect. If the shoe fits.
All right, listen, Drew. We love you, and we want to just chop it up with you, but we really need to get down to brass tacks here, because let me just say this to start off with. the SEC is the best conference in the country, and so we're not going to tolerate any slander or anything otherwise when you come on. I'm just kidding. We want to have a healthy discussion here. The thing that I think about with you, because you're covering Ohio State, but also covering the entire conference, and kind of trying to look at it expanded in that way. Ohio State is one of those teams nationally for me that looks like an SEC team, but is not in the SEC and maybe that's just our perspective. I don't know how you feel about that, but there is a short list of teams outside of the SEC that if SEC fans look at them, they go, yeah, they're built like us. And I think you put Ohio State anywhere in the country and they're going to find success. And I mean, any conference in the country, and they're going to find success. So first of all, let's talk about Tony Petitti. Let's start there. Let's start at the top and we'll work our way down to some individual teams.
Is that the top?
Well, it's supposed to be the top, isn't it, Craig? If the man wears the hat and he has the title and he stands in that gap, isn't he supposed to be at the top?
Sure, if you say so, buddy.
So he has some comments this week. Craig wrote it up for us. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you go check out Craig's article. I think it was titled "Why You Got to Be So Mean" or something to that effect. Do you want to correct me? I see you.
No, it's why you got to be so mean. The Big Ten and the ACC were drinking the haterade this weekend.
All right, so Tony Petitti makes the comments about 6-3 being quote unquote good. What are your thoughts, Drew? Is 6-3 what you need to be successful in the Big Ten?
If 6-3 is your benchmark, especially if you're in the Big Ten or even the SEC, you should probably be aiming a little bit higher. 6-3 is a banner year for like Illinois and a couple of others, but like I don't know. He's trying to position a way to justify that the 4 auto the auto qualifiers when the college football playoff eventually expands. And I've said that I'm against it, even if it is, benefiting the team that I've grown up rooting for, because I think the last time Ohio State finished outside of the top 4 in the Big Ten was 2011. And then the time before that was, I think, 1999. I looked it up back when I wrote about it way back when. Now 6-3 is like, it's a good season. It's not like, you should hang your hat on it and make your way into the college football playoff. Obviously Ohio State had 2 in conference losses last year with that close one to Oregon. And then the game that still will never not baffle me with Michigan. Yeah, the loss to Michigan, of course. I'll never understand it. I'll never understand it. I'll be on my deathbed and I will remember the 2024 matchup, and I'll be like, I don't know what happened on the field, but whatever it did, it worked. And then, Ohio State went on the run. But yeah, Tony Petitti, he is doing his job in terms of making sure that the Big Ten tries to throw its weight around. And I still find it to be really weird. I'm like, if you got 3 conference losses, obviously, in the Big Ten, when they play 9 conference games, it's easier to get those 3 losses than if you play the 8. But yeah, I'm not in on that. If you lose 3 conference games, even if it's back when Indiana was in the division with Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, it's like, you're good, but I don't think that you're in the upper echelon and should be able to play in the college football playoff. You're headed for the Outback Bowl.
Right. And I think that's the interesting part, because I heard the slight little dig there, the 9 versus the 8, because that was the other thing that seemed to be a big topic of conversation: 9 conference games versus 8. And the SEC does play 8 conference games, but everyone also does play an additional Power 4 team. The only one this year that doesn't is Ole Miss, because Wake Forest kind of ducked on them. I think they were just trying to make it easier on Tony this year. I don't know.
Well, if you want to count Washington State,
I don't.
Where do we put them? Where do we put them?
Not in the Power 4.
They were when it was scheduled.
Not gonna right now. No, it's where you rank. It's where you play them now. So I think that's my biggest question. Is Petitti's job is to triumph and build up the Big Ten. We know the SEC. We know that everyone wants the SEC to go to 9 games. ABC, the Mouse wants to do it. Big Ten wants to do it. Great, that's fine. How does Petitti and Greg Sankey get together and say, okay, let's go to 16. let's give us more access. Forget your math problem, the 4, 4, 2, 2, 2, 3, 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 0, 9 model, and just go to the 5 plus 11 model. Do you think there's a road there where we have a 5 plus 11? SEC says, sure, we'll play 9 games. Do you think we have agreement there? And then do you think we're a little more kosher there? Or do you think it's problematic?
I would be surprised if either side blinks in one way or another, whether the Big Ten walking it back to 8 or the SEC jumping to 9, because one, we've got so long of building up all this conflict between the two. It's like you're not gonna take that L.
Right.
The only way that we're gonna do that is if we have complete uniform scheduling around college football, which would end up making it look like an NFL model, kind of like what I suggested before last season, like the promotion relegation, which is obviously pie in the sky. It'll never happen. The only way that we will get anything like that is if the NCAA decides that it has power and tries to figure this sort of thing out. But, the NCAA is just, 4 little letters, and that's about it. The Big Ten and the SEC, they own college football right now. And the only way is if they have some weird backroom, hashing it out kind of thing. I would be incredibly surprised.
What about if they came together like in an alliance? Do you think that would help?
Well, last time the Big Ten tried to go
look
with an
each other in
alliance,
the eyes,
right?
Nice shot, Greg.
Yeah.
So I think that's the interesting part, and I wonder if Petiti is going to be under pressure, because obviously you heard it from Greg Sankey, the 5 plus 11, but you also heard your mark being very positive from the Big 12. Jim Phillips had an opinion for once and did come out and kind of I think he's in that 5 plus 11 model. So you're starting to see a little bit of that groundswell kind of seeing out there. And I just wondered, is that enough to put the pressure on Petiti? Does Sankey sort of kind of push that together and kind of move that through?
I think what it'll take is the SEC getting an inordinate amount of teams in. Like obviously last year they got a good handful, but if they can get even more, like if Alabama or South Carolina had gotten in last year, I think it might have made the push a little bit, because they have this idea that there's no point in scheduling these big out of conference. So why not try to quote Kurt Signetti, the king poker, adopt an SEC type of schedule and schedule the FCS teams and so on and so forth, which I'm not really for. If Ohio State wants to schedule Youngstown State, I'm fine with it because they're in state. Grambling was a last second addition because that Ohio State and UConn backed out of theirs, but which wasn't exactly a powerful out of conference. But I think the only way for them to actually get moving, the Big Ten get moving on changing anything, is if the SEC has a ridiculous number of teams plus a 4th Big Ten team getting left out. Like if Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon make it, and Michigan is just outside, or even Illinois is just outside, and then they have that entire argument. I think the only way is the Big Ten get screwed, which
would never happen.
It's funny that Signetti said that too, because I got the stat this week from our owner here on Chief Sports Network, who did the math to see Power 4 games out of conference this year, by the conference, with 18 teams in the Big Ten, 16 teams in the SEC. It was 19-13 SEC to Big Ten in terms of game scheduled Power 4 opponents out of conference, and that included Washington State in both realms. So if you drop it down, I think the Big Ten plays Washington State and Oregon State, so that would drop you down to 11, drop the SEC down to 18. But regardless, there was more Power 4 out of conference. So to me, it's just, you're right, Signetti is the king poker, but maybe didn't do his homework enough to figure out that there's more out of conference Power 4 scheduling happening in the SEC as well. And, maybe he pushes back with, well, you have an extra game to do that with because you're playing 8 conference games, and that's where we go with the conversation.
Right.
But as far as coaches go, in terms of commenting from one conference to the other, I think James Franklin's comments are more of the interesting ones. So I think we have that video, Lucas, if you want to go ahead and throw that up for us really quick.
You're welcome, Drew.
on a national level, in my opinion.
Coach, what?
See, it's a different vibe and it's a different feeling. I think that other conference, when they have their meetings, there's essentially a press conference every single day at the end of the meetings. It keeps people talking about that conference at a time of the year and makes them relevant. We're not doing that. We need to be talking about the Big Ten and our programs and the things that we have done, and making it as accessible to everybody as we possibly can, and connecting with the fans. And don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I think Vegas is a special place, and I think they run events as well as anybody. But it's a different feeling. It's a different feeling. And I've been at those other places where people are putting up babies for you to autograph and stuff. It's different. So I think there's still some things that we got to be strategic and smart about that are going to put our conference and our schools in the best position on a national level, in my opinion.
Coach, what?
All right, Drew. So obviously you have a coach here who's coached in both leagues. He's kind of seen both of the dynamics that you have going on, and is quite honestly not pleased with the presentation at Big Ten Media Days. From your perspective, somebody who's followed the league, followed these teams for a really long time and does a great job of covering it, what's your take on his comments?
I think he's completely correct. The other conference thing is funny coming from James Franklin. I'm like, I get that you coached at Vandy, but I don't think that you're the one that should be making those comments, my friend. But that aside, no, I do think he's correct. A buddy of mine for another show, Saturday Glory, he went over this entire thing as well. It's like he's got a point. When you think of Big Ten, yes, we have the West Coast teams. When you think of Big Ten, you don't think Las Vegas. Indianapolis is that. Indianapolis is right there. Indianapolis or Chicago for that matter, because it's right here in the Midwest. And I think he led up into that, or it was right after that comment itself. He mentioned that a lot of the people on the ground, a lot of the beat writers and so on and so forth that could have attended, couldn't. I am one of them. I could afford to drive 3 hours to Indianapolis from here in, tropical Toledo, Ohio, but
nice area.
A flight to Las Vegas is not happening from me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to Indianapolis was a self-serving thing for me, but like he's completely correct in the sense that, it was mind-boggling when they announced that they're going to Vegas, because Vegas does not have a Big Ten footprint. I understand that we have UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington out there. They've had one season in the Big Ten. Yeah, Oregon won. But like, there's no footprint there. There's nothing Big Ten tying them there. Vegas throws a party, but like, there's nothing Big Ten out there. We were really lucky at Last Word on Sports to have both our Washington and Penn State writers make their way out there. Mm-hmm. But Indianapolis would have, at the very least, 14 of the teams. Maybe not Rutgers and Maryland, because they're still out there. But like, they would have had a much better attendance by like beat writers and fans and so on and so forth. So I completely agree with James Franklin. Chalk that down once.
And that was a surprise for me, because he basically talked about it. He was like, basically they're tucked in the back corner of the hotel. Like it's kind of like an afterthought. There's no St. Elmo's. What was it with the cocktail sauce and the shrimp? What did it cross in Indianapolis there? What is that? It's not St. Elmo's. I don't know. There's a steakhouse in there somewhere fancy. But no, I to me it's Chicago. To me it's Indianapolis. That screams Big Ten. And if you're going to placate to the West Coast, go to Seattle or go to LA. Like, right. You don't have a team in Las Vegas. Are they going to move the Big Ten championship to Las Vegas? Like, it doesn't make sense. It feels like not to bring up Coldplay again, but it feels like a man in a midlife crisis who can't figure out what they want, so they're gonna go out to Vegas for it. And I just don't think that fits, and I don't think that works.
I would have understood a little bit more if it was LA because of the Rose Bowl tie.
Yes,
obviously
exactly.
it's not as Pac-12 and Big Ten anymore because the Pac-12 is dead and is not going to be a power conference when it brings in all these other state schools. But like, you at least have that footprint. You saw the Rose Bowl with Ohio State and Oregon, and it was standing room only. And Ohio State, Ohio State travels well, but like, you got LA, you have that. There is a Big Ten footprint if you're going to placate the West Coast. But yeah, no, the Big Ten headquarters are in Chicago. The Big Ten title game is in Indianapolis. It made no sense.
Nope. All right, let me ask one more question before we get you out of here, Drew. Because obviously that's chalk one up in terms of media days for the SEC once again and being the dominant conference and grabbing attention. But let's look at teams that actually play on the field now, okay? So beyond Ohio State and Penn State, who I think everybody has as national contenders coming into 2025, one of the arguments that can be made conference versus conference is going to be depth. And I think that's always the core heartbeat of these debates is which conference has more quality teams. And we've tried to have this discussion in terms of can bowl season help us determine that. And I don't think it's a good indicator because especially at this point, there's so many opt-outs and you don't know who you're going to get and who's going to be there or whatever. Should we have an SEC Big Ten challenge to let them just match up in the middle of the year? Or are we just going to compare numbers back and forth? But ultimately, I think the biggest metric that we look at now is going to be how many teams are going to make it into the college football playoff. And so for you, beyond Ohio State and Penn State, how much drop-off is there behind those two teams? And who else do you tag as somebody who has a chance of making a run at the postseason?
I would say that Ohio State, Penn State, then you've got I think there's a little bit of a drop, and then you hit Oregon. Oregon's going to be replacing a lot, but they recruit as well as anybody. I do respect Dan Lanning, even if he's a bit annoying. They have what it takes, I think, and Decorian Moore is going to be a dog. But you got Oregon. I think Indiana is probably going to be all right because of their weak schedule. Michigan going to be led by the defense again, and then Illinois. I think Illinois will be better than what people think.
Yeah, I mean, no Maple Missile. Craig pointed that out for us in the notes here. I can see it. We'll see what Indiana does. But beyond the top two, we're going to have to wait and see what happens on the field. Again, Drew Crabtree from Last Word on College Football, Last Word on Sports. You can follow along with him to get your coverage of Ohio State, get your Big Ten thoughts, Cincinnati Bengals as well, and make sure that you're following along with Drew so that you can catch up with all of that. If there's somebody that we love that's outside of the SEC, put this guy in the basket, okay? Now, it's time for us to catch a break. Drew, thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back in just a minute again on the TriFit Performance guest line. Let me remind you that TriFit Performance in Lexington is your one-stop shop for physical therapy and for overall performance. Mitch is there, and you need to give him a call. You need to hit him up, shoot him a message. TriFitPerformance.com is going to help you, whether you're an athlete who's in training or you're rehabbing an injury or you just want to get more active in your life, whether you're a runner, a swimmer, a college athlete. Go see Mitch at TriFit Performance and Physical Therapy, TriFitPerformance.com. We'll be right back on SEC Sunday night, and we'll have Brad Crawford here to break down the top 5 coaches in the SEC. We'll see you in a minute.
When playing sports, you want a coach that will fight for you. At Hewitt Diamaduros Law Firm, we've got your back. Whether it's personal injury, insurance disputes, negligence, or wrongful death, our team delivers exceptional legal services that makes meaningful difference in the lives of the individuals and families we work for. Visit hdlawsc.com. hdlawsc.com. Hewitt Diamaduros, we're on your team.
Oh man, the building is on fire.
Emergencies and accidents happen. When you're in the middle of a fire or water event, all you want is for things to return to normal as soon as possible. Resto Pros of the Midlands is with you, guiding you through the process and working with you to get your home or office back in working order. They'll answer your questions, discuss procedures, and can act as your advocate when it comes to processing your insurance claim. Resto Pros Midlands SC.com. Open 24/7 when you need them. Quality that is guaranteed.
At TriFit Physical Therapy and Performance, we believe true health and peak performance start with personalized care. Whether you're an athlete recovering from injury or just chasing your next personal best, we're here to guide your journey. With expert coaching, hands-on therapy, and transparent cash-based pricing, you get the care you need without the insurance red tape. One client drove 100 miles just to see us and said it was worth every mile. Contact us at trifitperformance.com or 803-353-5619. TriFit Physical Therapy and Performance, where recovery meets results.
Yo, what's up?
Baby, let's go!
This is SEC, Sunday night on the Chiefs Sports Network.
Welcome back to SEC Sunday Night here live on the Chief Sports Network every Sunday night at 8 p.m. I'm here with our friend Brad Crawford, who many of you probably saw with JB on his other Gamecocks earlier this week. But if you are a fan of SEC Sunday Night and have not branched out to the rest of the Chief Sports Network, then we want to welcome Brad here tonight. We're excited about the season that's coming up. We're getting a little closer, Brad, to being able to really talk about some football. How you doing?
Doing well, man. Yeah, we're about 2 weeks out from the start of fall camp at most programs, about 5 weeks from the season opener. Looking forward to getting into August and maybe some of this temperature lower down a little bit as we encroach into the season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We have an interesting stretch. I was talking to somebody this morning who just moved here from Pennsylvania.
Ooh.
And I'm in the upstate of South Carolina, and they made the statement, I thought that they moved in during the dead of winter, and we had a little bit of a stretch of a cold run there, and they thought they were getting away from it. And now here we are, and we're setting records for days above 90. I just was in my truck earlier, and it said 102. And so I think that we're gonna top 100 here in the upstate for a couple of days this week. What about you? Are we triple digits or sticking it in the 90s?
In Fayetteville, I've been getting my daily workouts in at like 6:30 a.m. and it's still swamp butt at 6:30. So yeah, it's been crazy hot here in the Eastern Carolina.
Yeah, there's really no relief, but that tells me a little something too that we're headed towards football season. And it's good to finally be where you can taste it. You can tell that the practices are coming. But before we get into any actual teams or players, my friend and co-host here on SEC Sunday Night, Craig McMichael, had an article this week highlighting who he thinks are the top 5 coaches in the SEC.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give you those 5, and then we'll take a minute just to kind of pick that apart and see if we agree with them or if there's anybody that we would find and replace in that group. So at number 5, he has Eli Drinkwitz coming in based on the job that he's done at Missouri. Now, I'll just give the backstory here that Craig and I both think that if the Florida job opens, that Drink should be candidate at number 1 that gets a call from Gainesville. But we'll see how that goes. Obviously, it's a less with more type of situation in Missouri, but now they seem to be, in terms of finances, playing with the big boys.
Not to mention, I mean, 2 years ago, him beating Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl was a career win for him. And then we saw at Ohio State with largely that same roster did last season. So that's not a bad pick at number 5.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at it from an entirety of the SEC standpoint, to be honest with you, if there's one team that I feel like doesn't really fit, it's Missouri.
Yeah.
But that being said, you have to compliment him a little bit on what he's overcome, because I don't think that I'm alone in that sentiment that, hey, they're kind of an outsider. You don't really know what you're going to get sometimes, and you have to be able to be competitive at a different level when you're in Como than you do if, say, you have a script A or a G on your chest. So I don't hate it. I kind of want to hate it, but I don't hate the fact that he has him at 5. At number 4, though, he has Brian Kelly at LSU. Obviously, still looking for something breakthrough in terms of the national championship deal there. The problem, I think, in Baton Rouge is that your last 3 coaches have won it, so the expectations are there. And of those coaches, is Brian Kelly the best? I don't know. Like, what do you think about having Brian Kelly coming in there in that top 5? And is 4 too high, too low? Where do you put him?
I've got Brian Kelly at number 3 in my personal rankings, probably higher than most. He's 35 and 36 in his career against top 25 teams. And there's only 2 SEC coaches, Kirby Smart and Kellen DeBoer, who have career winning records against top 25. And Brian Kelly's right there. Obviously, he got to the final championship game in 2012, lost Alabama while he was at Notre Dame. And I think had he recruited at a top 5 level at Notre Dame, he would have got back there and potentially won. We saw him take the Irish, despite not having a great roster, to several Final Four appearances. But that being said, it's win now mode for Brian Kelly in year 4. As you mentioned, last 3 head coaches there have all won national titles, and the last 2 have done it by the end of their 3rd season. Brian Kelly now entering year 4. So I think he knows, man, the writing's on the wall if he does not at least get to the playoff as one of those 12 teams this season.
What are your expectations? If you have to pin it right now, as we look at LSU, I think they're pretty high on my part. I actually have them picked to win the SEC. And so sometimes I'm standing on an island with that, but I think that they have enough personnel coming in on defense to give Blake Baker the guys that he needs. I don't have any questions about the offense. We know that Nuss is going to gamble a little bit, but outside of that, they're going to have playmakers. He's a good quarterback. I think they're going to score points. What do you think in terms of the national scene? Where do they fit in?
Yeah, I think LSU is going to be one of 4 SEC teams to make the playoff this season. Texas is my top seed. They're my preseason favorite to win the SEC and potentially win the Natty. Number 2 is Alabama, 3 LSU, and 4 Georgia. So I am expecting a little bit of a slide from Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs. But LSU's right up there, man. They had the top-ranked transfer portal class according to 24/7, and they have pushed all their chips to the middle of the table, knowing that Brian Kelly needed, like you said, defensive personnel, and he got that. I mean, they overpaid for Jack Pyburn, the edge out of Florida. Florida did not match the offer. LSU warned him he's going to start. They've got Weeks back at linebacker. Harold Perkins now, a year removed from a knee injury. He's back to full strength. And, oh, by the way, after the spring game, they needed a starting safety, so they pulled Houston's best player off defense and A.J. Halsey and got him a former All-Big 12, hard hitter in the secondary. So LSU is loaded at every position. They may have the top pick in the 2026 NFL draft in Garrett Nussmeier. And I think anything less than 10 wins for LSU would be a major, major disappointment.
Yeah, I agree. At number 3, though, we begin to see a little bit of Craig's opinion come in. I can see where he's making the argument here, but he has Lane Kiffin at number 3. Mm-hmm. And I think as you're looking at what Lane has been able to do in terms of talent acquisition and putting people into place, I see his points to a degree. The point that I agree with that Craig always makes about Lane is that he is becoming the mouth and the spokesperson of the SEC from a media standpoint. With Nick Saban gone, you kind of have a void of who's going to be the coach that's going to be the one who does the talking, who's going to be out front. And some people will look at Kirby for that, given the accomplishments, but that's not really Kirby's style. And so he'll say what he needs to say when he needs to say it, but he's very much focused on Georgia football. Lane will talk a little bit more about the entirety of the sport, the conference, the country, and those types of things. And so I think that does elevate him in terms of where we think about him in terms of prominence, but maybe not in terms of his accomplishments as a coach. I wouldn't put him in my top 5.
I had Lane Kiffin at number 5. I would not put him top 3. I think top 3 is sort of saved for elite head coaches. I don't consider Lane Kiffin part of that pantheon yet.
Sure.
Because you can't, lose a game as a 3-touchdown favorite at home to Kentucky and be amongst the elite. The guys that have ahead of him, they don't lose, games they shouldn't with a better roster. And last season, it's the best roster that Lane Kiffin's had in his entire coaching career. And the schedule set up for success, but he didn't get there, man. Lost to a 7-5 Florida team on the road, lost Kentucky at home, and didn't make the playoff because of it. We saw how many draft picks Ole Miss produced last year, including first-round quarterback. So Lane Kiffin's not top 3 to me, but I do believe he's a top 5 SEC coach.
Speaking of quarterbacks, Austin Simmons comes in, and we've talked a lot about him maybe being under the radar type of guy in the SEC this year. At 19 years old and in the master's program, you got the physical tools. I said last week, though, I think that obviously you're going to start for Lane Kiffin, then you know that you have physical tools. And he's proven in the classroom his mental ability. So I think he can retain information. It's the processing speed and the clutch gene that we don't really know. And we got a taste of it against Georgia last year, obviously. But for me, I'm going to need a bigger sample size than that. But I am carefully watching Austin Simmons to be one of the breakout stars of the SEC this year. Do you think that Ole Miss can make a run? I know you just gave your top 4 SEC teams in terms of the playoff, but where do the Rebels factor in terms of pushing somebody to break into that group?
I think they could beat one of those 4 teams on any given Saturday, sure. But I don't see Ole Miss, challenging for 10 wins this season. Austin Simmons is a guy that, he ditched baseball for likely a future NFL career a couple of years ago. He throws a 94-mile-an-hour fastball, but he gave up baseball to focus on football. And there's a reason Lane Kiffin did not go portal with a quarterback this cycle. They spent a ton of money on other positions, man, but he's confident that Austin Simmons is going to have a big year. I'm kind of questioning that, not because I don't believe in Austin Simmons, the player, but I don't think Ole Miss is going to have a run game. And, outside of maybe Caden Lee at wide receiver, there's some questions there for me that, they didn't sign as many top-end guys as far as pass catchers as they had the last couple cycles.
Yeah, they've been really loaded in terms of that talent on the perimeter. And I agree with you. I mean, Caden Lee's great, but just going off of how many weapons that they had last year for Jackson Dart. And the running game is a question for me in terms of, honestly, Lane's commitment to it to begin with. But that's another argument for another day. At number 2, we have Steve Sarkisian, who this year is going to have I think, the best roster in college football. What can they do with it becomes the question. And I think, can he earn that number 2 spot by taking them to a national championship is really the question for me. I don't have a ton of pushback with him being in that slot, given where they've been the past couple of years. But I think that if they don't get it done this year, then we need to have a few questions about what can he do with the talent that's in front of him.
Yeah, I've got Sark number 2 in my SEC top 5. He's the only coach in college football in Power 4 ranks that have gotten to back-to-back semifinal games. And really, had they had better red zone execution, Texas that is, last couple of years, maybe they would have had a title to show for it. But I think now with Arch Manning, they're going to be a little bit more balanced. Trey Wisner, I mean, he has a chance at running back to be like week 1 college football star. If he goes out and has, 215 rushing against a brand new Ohio State defense, then he's the early front runner, not Arch Manning. So I think much of the offseason focus has been on all those playmakers offensively, but man, Texas has 2 future top 10 picks on defense too, Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill. Those guys are going to be early day 1 draft picks. This Texas defense, man, I think will be the best in college football, and that's part of the reason I have them winning the SEC.
Yeah, I agree that the defense is really what sets them apart. But for some reason it's not talked about. Like when we dig in a little bit, people want to say, yes, the Texas defense is a top 5 defense in the country, but I don't see that on the forefront. And maybe that's just the Arch Manning factor, like you say. All right, number 1, I think there's no argument here. Kirby Smart comes in at number 1 on the list of SEC coaches, given the national championships and the overall consistency over the last decade in Athens. So if you have pushback to that, then feel free to give it. But given that you don't, where do we see Georgia this year? You have them as the 4th team in the SEC making it into the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Where do they slot?
The one thing I have about this top 5, I didn't hear Kalen DeBoer's name, and
I agree.
Yeah, he was in my top 5. He's number 4 for me. I'm not selling all my Kalen stock after 1 year. 15-3 against top 25 teams in his coaching career, and he had won 11 straight against ranked teams at Washington. He was not getting the talent that other top 15 programs had. Obviously, Michael Penix has a chance to be a rising star for the Falcons this year. Good quarterback development there. And I still think Alabama in year 2 under Kalen DeBoer is going to be one of the America's, surprise teams. And that's kind of crazy saying that about Bama, because that's something that we haven't been able to use with the Crimson Tide the last 2 decades under Saban. But I just think that they're going to be much better suited now that DeBoer has his right-hand man, Ryan Grubb. But getting back to Kirby Smart, he's number one on my list. I think he tops national coaches list too. One of only, I guess, 3 active coaches right now with a title to his name, him, Dabo, and now Ryan Day. So rarefied air there, but Kirby Smart has to be able to change a little bit. We saw Nick Saban, his adaptability was great at Alabama. Kirby Smart, we saw last season, that pro-style offense under Bobo just got really stale. And when they turn it over and don't have chunk plays, they look really average on that side of the football. And we saw it against Notre Dame. They couldn't block, and Gunnar Stockton, felt the brunt of that. So 4 new offensive linemen for Georgia. That's part of the reason I see a slight step back. And when I say slight step back, I'm saying 9-3, 10-2.
Yeah.
But I can't guarantee that a 3-loss SEC team gets in the playoff.
Yeah, I have them at 9-3 as well, and I think that it'll be interesting. I think that the chemistry between Bobo and Stockton is something that I'm watching because I think it can really be what puts them over the top. I also think there's a chance that Nate Frazier breaks out if those 4 offensive linemen come together and is one of the SEC's leading rushers, and then we're back in a different era and a different conversation if that's really what happens. On the Alabama front, I agree with you that Ryan Grubb coming back is huge for Kalen DeBoer, and I think that it's going to make a difference this year. My question is, how confident are we in Ty Simpson? We had Max Chadwick from College PFF last week, and he was extremely confident in Ty Simpson. I've been on the record saying that I'm not going to put it past Keelan Russell to start before the year's over with, and that's where I'm a little up in the air about where we're going to land with Alabama this year. I have faith in their defense and in their skill positions on offense as well, and so I think that it all comes down to the most important position in football. What do you think about the Tide in terms of the quarterback position?
Yeah, I think if Keelan Russell plays, that would be out of necessity that the staff feels, he's going to portal after the season. I think right now he's number 3, Austin Mack's 2. I was actually surprised, man, that they were able to hold on to Austin Mack after the spring cycle because I thought once Ty Simpson pretty much got the QB1 designation, Austin Mack would leave. Like, what do you mean I lost a second straight quarterback? But, they kept him, and he's a very good player. Washington liked him. They signed him under DeBoer out there. Ty Simpson, that's kind of the million-dollar question. I expect him to be serviceable. I don't expect him to win a ton of games with his arm. I don't think Alabama's going to have to ask that much of him the way they had to do with Jalen Milroe. But I do think they're better as a passing team with Grubb in tow and Simpson now because Jalen Milroe, after the first read was covered up, man, he wanted to run the football. And that resulted in big plays every now and then, but it also stunted the growth of guys like Ryan Williams and some of the other receivers out there. Bama's loaded at that position. Isaiah Horton, big pickup from Miami. Had a Miami source tell me a few weeks ago that, he took more money to go to Alabama. We wanted to keep Isaiah Horton wanted to keep Isaiah here, and, he took more money. So I think Isaiah Horton, Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, that's some elite wide receiver talent at Bama. And Ty Simpson's a guy who, had he lost this quarterback competition, that would have been the 3rd time in his career, which has to be an SEC record.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it makes sense that he's going to land there. My question would be, like you said about Austin Mack, if things go sideways, to your point, who do we want to put our future in? Are we going to move on with Austin Mack, or are we going to move on with Keelan Russell? And I think that just from what I've heard mentally about Keelan Russell and his approach to the game and preparation, I think that the kid has a real future. And so I can see them putting all their eggs in that basket if Simpson starts to falter. Yeah. Okay, like you said, we're headed into fall camp, so let's wrap it up here and just look at what's upcoming. In terms of teams and personnel, is there anything particular that catches your eye that you're really looking out for? Obviously, when we look across the league, one of the things that I'm always watching for is injuries because depth is an issue at this point. But beyond that, is there a leading storyline that sticks out to you in terms of what fans can expect to hear out of fall camp across the SEC?
I think a leading storyline, you're probably going to see a little bit more positivity and hype coming out of a College Station. I felt like before SEC Media Days, a lot of folks were down on Texas A&M. Coming out of Atlanta, there were more people, hyping A&M. I think the Aggies are like a 7-5 team. One of my bold predictions last month was I don't think Texas A&M finishes the season in the top 25. And that's because Marcel Reed did not look great the second half of the year last year. Despite him being crowned the last few weeks as one of the SEC's top returning quarterbacks, I'm not sold on that yet. Colin Klein back at OC, and they have, ample wide receiver talent, but can Kevin Concepcion, is he a 1,000-yard guy in the SEC? Probably not. Where is he going to play outside of a couple targets at slot? So I want to see, development at A&M and what kind of positive vibes come out of College Station. Because I don't know. I've sold my stock on A&M as a SEC contender in 2025.
Yeah, I agree actually, and I think that they just kind of slipped back into what we've expected to be Texas A&M, which is 7 or 8 wins. Anything just from a South Carolina perspective, the Rasul Faison thing is still kind of a lingering question, still kind of a lingering issue. Do you have thoughts there in terms of when or how or where, and what happens with the Gamecocks running game if he is booted out to the NFL?
I think the Lenore Sells is going to probably throw it 400 times this year. And, I mean, maybe that might work out well for Gamecocks offense, but they put a lot of eggs in Rasul Faison's basket this spring. And I know I've said on the record several times, other analysts have disagreed with me, but I've got it from several good sources that the teams that wanted Rasul Faison were not confident that he was going to be deemed eligible. South Carolina staff was. And here we are in late July. He still has not been cleared yet. Now, as of SEC Media Days, Shane Beamer expected to hear from the NCAA. They have not heard that. Here we are going into August, and he still has not been cleared. So that's a very big question for that offense. You want to have a guy who's capable of 1,000 yards in the SEC available to you. Another big question for me is, where is Brandon Cisse going to play in that secondary? I think he was the portal gem signing of this cycle. I said it back when he committed. I guess it was in April. He was maybe an undervalued guy nationally, but I watched a lot of NC State, ECU, UNC football, and he's been a baller the last year and a half. And just his versatility in the secondary, you probably already know who your 2 starting corners are, a couple returning guys there. But just, where he's going to fit in certain packages for Clayton White, I'm looking forward to seeing, where he gets slotted the next few weeks here in practice, and really what that Gamecock 2 deep looks like in late August before they roll into Atlanta and play Virginia Tech.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that from a defensive standpoint, South Carolina has some moving parts, and they have some new faces. But the real question for me is, like you said, where do things fall? I don't have a question in terms of, on my part at least, the quality of talent that they have acquired and put together on the roster. You're going to have to see some guys step up that haven't necessarily done it before. But I've grown to trust that staff in terms of their evaluations. They tend to hit more than they miss. And so will they miss on some of these portal guys? Of course they will. But will they miss on the lion's share of them? That's highly unlikely. So Cisse is the like you said, he's the one that can kind of land in a lot of different places. And so it's a question of, is he too good not to put in this position, or are we really just putting him into our weakest other area and filling it with the strengths of the rest of the secondary? So yeah, a lot of things to look out for, and we'll be looking forward to talking to you more as we get into the into camp season. And then as the season kicks off, we'll be breaking down how we're moving from week to week in terms of what these games are actually looking like. Thank God it's almost time to actually talk about real football on the field. Thank you so much, Brad, for being with us tonight. We appreciate you as always. Brad Crawford, 24/7 Sports. Make sure that you follow along.
At TriFit Physical Therapy and Performance, we believe true health and peak performance start with personalized care. Whether you're an athlete recovering from injury or just chasing your next personal best, we're here to guide your journey. With expert coaching, hands-on therapy, and transparent cash-based pricing, you get the care you need without the insurance red tape. One client drove 100 miles just to see us and said it was worth every mile. Contact us at trifitperformance.com or 803-353-5619. TriFit Physical Therapy and Performance, where recovery meets results.
When playing sports, you want a coach that will fight for you. At Hewitt Diamaduros Law Firm, we've got your back. Whether it's personal injury, insurance disputes, negligence, or wrongful death, our team delivers exceptional legal services that makes meaningful difference in the lives of the individuals and families we work for. Visit hdlawsc.com. hdlawsc.com. Hewitt Diamaduros, we're on your team.
This is SEC, Sunday night, part of the Chief Sports Network.
Welcome back to SEC Sunday Night Live here every week on the Chief Sports Network at 8 p.m. Again, thank you to Drew Crabtree and Brad Crawford here this week with us on the TriFit Performance guest line. Go to trifitperformance.com and make sure that you take care of all of your physical therapy and performance needs. Also, want to remember that if you need anything, if you need to mount a defense for personal injury or insurance disputes, or any of that, $58 million in verdicts and settlements for Hewitt Damaduras, hdlawsc.com. They'll mount a great defense for you, as I suspect one Craig McMichael is about to mount for his top 5 coaches list. Craig, the floor is yours. As we move into our last word, let's just hear it. Who's about your top 5?
Yeah. Okay. First off, Lane Kiffin is number 3. What has Ole Miss done since? I'm sorry, before Lane got there? We got double-digit wins. So I'm sorry, Brad. No, thank you. Also, Kalen DeBoer is such a big-time winner. What happened against Oklahoma and Vandy? That's why Kalen was honorable mention. Also, honorable mention, Josh Heupel. Josh Heupel probably been in that top 5 if we were making this list back in December. A blowout loss in Columbus, and then losing Nico, put him down. Finally, who else made honorable mention? Shane Beamer, baby. What does he do now with some expectations? He's got Lenoris, lots of expectations there. What happens with it? So I think I actually think Brad and I weren't too far off, but I did have to get after him a little bit with Kalen DeBoer. There's a lot of Kalen DeBoer love, a lot of Alabama love. I heard it a lot on Reddit this weekend, but that's why he was honorable mention.
Yeah, I can't lie. I think I would have had Kalen DeBoer in my top 5 as well.
Yeah, what a shock.
Like I said, I think I would have bumped Lane just based on accomplishments. I get what you're saying, though. I can understand the perspective of taking a program like Ole Miss somewhere that they've never been before, and if he continues to be consistent in this mode, especially if he makes a playoff or 2, then we're having a little bit of a different conversation. It's the same conversation you can make for Drink, whereas I don't necessarily like what has Missouri done really nationally, but it's Missouri, so.
Yeah, well, Rob, unlike some people, I can look beyond the logo. You know, I can see more globally, and I can think about it in more broad terms rather than
right.
Just
We look right past Athens to Oxford and Austin, and then beyond that, it gets a little blurry.
Everyone's shocked that was my top 3. It was just shocked.
Yeah, not at all. Your top 3: Lane, Sark, Kirby. Okay, let me ask this question before we get out of here. Have you seen what do you do right now? Because I have the shakes because I'm ready for football so much. Like, what is your go-to in terms of feeding the appetite of the football fan? Are you fiending for it a little bit? Do you feel like me? Because I feel like I'm just jittery.
Well, I did it behind me tonight. I knew Drew Crabtree was coming on, and I love to poke, so I had to put some stuff up there. But that's all I'm doing is I'm running my mouth, kind of chatting, looking to kind of pick these little fights, try to have some arguments, try to have some fun.
Have you gotten into old games at all? Did you watch that game, or are you just putting it back there to talk junk?
I'm more just putting it on there to talk. I will hit up a game here and there. I love how they throw them on YouTube, like 30 or 60 minutes. You can watch a whole game. I will do that from time to time, but honestly, I'm ready to kick.
Yeah, I watched 3 or 4 games this weekend. Just kind of looking back at last year, doing some quarterback breakdown as we kind of talk about that a little bit, just looking at some of these guys, especially people at the top that we got good tape on, like Nuss or Lagway or Lenore Sellers, where you have some consistency to be able to look and see, like, we can read and try to digest everybody else's pros and cons list all we want, but I'm just going to look at the tape at the end of the day. And so for me, Netflix has done a great job of feeding our appetites in the past few years. And we've gotten these quarterback and receiver series that have given us a behind the scenes look, and it really feeds my football appetite. I love that documentary style.
Mm-hmm.
So
Netflix has the recipe for it, I'm sure, for sure.
Yeah, and so we got the NFL version, which is quarterback, a little early this year because on August 5th, Netflix will release SEC football any given Saturday which goes behind the scenes with SEC teams in 2024. So I could not be more excited, as these series they've done in the past have been really, really good quality in terms of what I feel like just hearing from players, getting that locker room experience, breaking down certain moments. And on the cover art of this, you get names like Garrett Nussmeier, Arch Manning, Lenore Sellers, DJ Lagway. And so I'm excited to see what they looked at and exactly how much we're going to get from each team, who gave them this more access than others, and what of fuel are we going to get moving into the 2025 season, where we're going to be pulling for guys maybe we weren't pulling for before.
So I think what Netflix does is they do a really good job of bringing the periphery out and then having them focus on a topic. I think they did this with Drive to Survive with F1. I think that was the pandemic winner. F1 was the winner. Everyone watched that and wanted to come in. For you and me, it's going to be like, cool, we're going to get to see something. I don't think it's going to be that level of access that we're going to need. I think it's going to be just kind of like, hey, cool, like this is something to fill time.
It just whets our appetites, and I think it's the perfect filler, because here we are about to hit fall camp, and we're going to get some tidbits here and there, but it really gives us a little extra. I want to say thank you to my co-host here, Craig McMichael. Always, it is a pleasure to have you in.
For joining in.
Shout out to the chat box. A real shout out to Michael Lynn, who has been very active tonight, and so many of you others who have been active in the chat box tonight. Lucas, we're going to try to figure out if we can see how to kick Casey out of the chat box before next week. This has been SEC Sunday Night here live on the Chief Sports Network every Sunday at 8 p.m. Brought to you proudly by Hewitt Damaduras, and we're excited. When we get back together, we'll be one step closer to kicking it off. We'll see you next time.